Hello everyone, I'm Kalen North, and welcome back to Terra Invicta. Today we're doing part 2 of our Protectorate campaign. Last time we took Singapore, the Central African Republic, and part of Kazakhstan. Today we're going to try and finish taking Kazakhstan, go for a bunch of efficient science countries, and then start working on trying to get one of the big nations in the world for our long-term science production. In order to do that, we're going to be doing a couple of different things. First thing is we're going to go look at this Nations tab, and I'm actually going to go ahead and show all nations. Right now it only shows nations where we have control points. And then sort all of those nations by their scientific output, which I've already done actually. So as you can see, the most scientifically advanced nation right now is the United States, but they're very hard to get into, and so we're not going to try and do that right now. China is also pretty darn good, as is India, but again, very difficult to get into either of those countries. We're going to instead scroll way down this list to some very small countries. We're going to look for the highest science values for countries that only have a single control point right now. Reason being, this is going to be the most efficient way to get science for the first couple months of the game. And then from there, we're going to transition to actually looking at a larger nation where we can really build a good scientific empire longer term. So right now, Kyrgyzstan is really appealing. They've got 19 science per month for a single control point. Tajikistan is pretty appealing. They've got 18 science for a single control point, although they are already controlled by the initiative, so we might have to try and purge them out of there if we want to take it. And then the Ratnakaran states have 17.4 science for a single control point, but the resistance is there, so we might need to try and purge them out of there if we want that one. Suriname? I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce that country's name. Has 17.2 for a single control point and is still open, so that's probably going to be a good target for us. So for now, I'm going to start by saying let's go take Kyrgyzstan. I'm going to send one of my weaker counselors in terms of persuasion to go do that, because we've already got decent popular support there, and so he's going to have pretty good odds even with only a persuasion skill of 3. So we're going to give him 2 influence, however, to try and boost his odds from just 73% to up to 84%.
Bringing them to our side.
And then hopping back into that list, just to figure out what my other targets were. I'm going to see if I can purge. Excuse me. I still need to take the second point in Kazakhstan. So we're gonna start with having Eric, our best persuasion counselor, try and take that one. So he's gonna go to Kazakhstan. 75% chance base. We're gonna put 2 influence in to get that up to 85% because we really want that point. In order to start working towards the executive cooldown. When you take the executive point in a nation, there's a 180-day timer that kicks in before you can take certain actions, like leaving the Eurasian Union, which we really want to do. So spending half a year waiting for that in-game, we want to get that control as quickly as possible so we don't have to keep waiting forever. Urantika can run either a control nation or a public campaign. There are still some empty nations that we want to try and take, so I'm going to have her do a control nation. I think we wanted... Let's see here. Scroll down. We already have someone doing Kyrgyzstan. I think the Suriname? I'm so sorry, I can't pronounce that one right. We're going to try and take that one. So we will do control nation, and it is actually pretty likely that she can take it. So we'll have her do that. And okay, so that's right. Oh, whoops. No, that's where she is in Belize City. She's over here in Suriname. Okay. And then Madeline is actually pretty good at purge missions, so I'm gonna see what her odds are to take Tajikistan. At least pretty low, only 12%. They've got pretty good popular support there, and we don't, so that's not ideal. We could potentially try to launch a coup there as well, which isn't great either. It's got pretty bad odds. So I'm going to have her just try and take another country that has much lower difficulty. So let's hop back into the nations panel. We're going to show all nations. Scroll down and look for something that she can try and take. We could have her try and take Belize. I think that's where she is already. Could have her try and take that one again. So we'll see how that goes. Control nation, Belize, yep. And I'm going to pump in 2 influence to get her up to 83% chance of success.
Taking control.
We are down to only 10 influence at this point, but that's fine. We're getting 2.1 a day, which is pretty good income, and that's going to help us pay for some organizations later on. Speaking of organizations, there are several here that are interesting, mostly Equinox Associates, but I don't know that we're going to get to that 2.4K money that we need to buy it in time. So we may or may not get a chance at actually acquiring this org, because these cycle every month. And so we may or may not have that shot. As it is, though, we're going to just start time, actually progress through the turn, and see how the dice roll. For the most part, we've got pretty good odds of taking each of these countries. We're north of 80%.
Significant support.
All right, so we got our first one. Here we've got a very, very small population. So it's not going to be a great long-term growth prospect, but I am still going to probably put... I'm going to put a pip into welfare and a pip into funding, I think, and skip putting a pip into economy right now, just because the population is so small that economy increases the per capita GDP, and with this tiny population, that's not going to increase very fast. They've already got a decent per capita GDP of 15 and 2/3 thousand per year, and pumping a bunch of resources into the economy is not going to do that much for them. So kind of like Singapore, this would potentially be another target for spoils, except that, again, it's such a small population that the spoils isn't going to be that good for us. As such, I'm instead going to try and pump funding and welfare to make this a longer-term acquisition for if and when we try and unify South America. And let's keep going. All right, research. We finished our alien signatures project. We get some more story. We couldn't find the aliens. It appears that we actually are trying to hide the aliens, which seems not helpful, but that's fine. And then there are missing animals and people near the crash site. So probably some alien abductions going on, although our faction's in denial of that. And we've also got this chance to start researching the origin of the aliens, potentially, unlocking later. Now, we don't have any other projects that I particularly want to do, so I'm just going to hit audience research and then turn this off. And then I'm going to actually start spreading out our research across different technologies. We get a slight bonus for spreading out our research as much as we can. And then I'm going to put this one from 1 pip to 3 pips. So we're spending 60% on We Are Not Alone so that we can control what happens when the next technology gets chosen. And we can still get some benefit from contributing to Skywatch and Mission to Space. We really do want to contribute to as many global techs as possible. A lot of global technologies unlock things. Skywatch doesn't actually unlock anything directly, and Mission to Space doesn't either. But still, for getting that research bonus and just accelerating the world's progress in science, it's probably worth doing, because we do want to research as much of the tech tree as we can by the end of the game.
Our presence is growing.
All right, Kazakhstan, we have full control now, so I'm going to copy across my priority. We're just investing in boost here, and here's that 180-day timer. So in 180 days, we'll be able to leave the Eurasian Union. Or if we manage to launch a coup in Kazakhstan earlier, we can potentially get out of there right away. That's not necessarily a great idea with our counselor mix. We don't have anyone who's great at launching coups. Madeline can do it, but she also can't do it in a nation with higher than 6 unrest, which is somewhat counterproductive. So we're going to see if we can change that later on. All right, Kyrgyzstan we have... now, Kyrgyzstan has a decent population. It's around the size of Singapore's, but they do have a much lower per capita GDP, so I am going to invest in their economy some, especially because we're going to start looking at taking a number of these Central Asian nations, which we might try to unify into a larger mega nation later on. For the time being, I'm going to put a pip into economy. Their inequality is actually really low, so I'm going to skip welfare and put a pip into funding. I don't remember if I've talked about this already. Funding is something that I think generally gets frowned upon in this game, where it's a lot less efficient than spoils in terms of generating cash income. But I kind of like putting funding in these small nations that you might swallow up into a mega nation later on, largely because that way when you have your mega nation, you actually get a bunch of funding from all of the funding gets absorbed into the nation when they unify. And I guess I've been talking about that a lot. That's a mechanic that we haven't really explored yet, is mega nations. A lot of nations can eventually research claims on other nations, which allow those nations to then unify into a larger federation or alliance, or into a single country, actually. Federations or something else, like the Eurasian Union. But there is a technology that allows Kazakhstan to unify several of the Central Asian countries. There's some possibilities for Russia to gain claims on a number of countries in the Eurasian Union and form a much larger megastate.
Our supporters are in place.
So all of that is something we want to kind of build towards. Here in Belize, very, very tiny population, so investing in the economy is really not going to do very much. Very high inequality, though, so getting some welfare might be worthwhile. I'm going to put a pip into welfare and a pip into funding and let them go with that, and just sort of rely on their science for now and keep going towards the next turn. All right, so Eric wants us to defend our control point in Singapore. We're not going to do that. There is a defend interests mission you can do, which costs 20 influence, which is almost all of our influence right now, and we really want to save that up for orgs instead. Speaking of orgs, we can actually afford to buy the Karina organization. I don't particularly want to at this point, because it requires someone being a criminal in order for you to equip it to them. So right now, Madeline is our only criminal. Our other 3 counselors can't equip it. The mission it grants is Assassinate, which she already has. And the monthly income is only 1 op, but it costs 3 ops, and so it'd be a few months before it even pays for itself, not to mention the cost in money and influence. So I'm probably going to skip this one and just save up for something larger, like potentially the Vela Cartel or Equinox Associates, and see what we can do with one of those. Meanwhile, I want to go back into the Nations tab, see what's still open as far as good, cheap science nations. And let's see here. These are filling up fast because we're taking them and other people are taking them. Looks like Madagascar, Cambodia, and Namibia are all potential candidates. So I'm gonna and Georgia. So let's go for those 4: Madagascar, Cambodia, Namibia, and Georgia. So Georgia's gonna be the hardest one. So I'm gonna have Eric try to take that one. And he's got an 80. Oh, not Belarus. I want Georgia. There we go. So he's got 85% chance already. We'll have him just go with that.
Ready.
I'm trying to remember what else was in there. I should just write these down. But Cambodia and Namibia and what was the fourth one? Was Madagascar. All right, so Madagascar Cambodia should be the easiest one. We've got the most public support there. So I'm gonna have our weakest counselor try to take that one. So Cambodia, we'll have not Andor. We'll have Madeline try to take that one. And she has really bad odds, so that's actually... I'm actually not going to have her do that then.
Standing by.
See how Andor can do at it. He's got pretty bad odds too. Maybe we should only take a couple of these then, and actually go try and start working on taking over some of the other slightly higher efficiency ones from other people. So, otherwise we can always just take the coin flip of a 50% shot, but it just feels bad to have the lower probability. So let's see here. Cambodia does have a slightly higher population, I think, so we might do better in one of the others. So let's see.
At your service.
Madagascar and Namibia. Namibia, she's actually got a 60% shot at. So if we pump in a couple of influence, we can get that up to 76%. So that's pretty good.
Establishing control.
Acknowledged.
Andor, let's see here. Wait, Mongolia? Did Mongolia? Oh. For some reason I thought we took Mongolia earlier. I must be mixing up with something else. I don't particularly want to take Mongolia right now. It's got decent science, so it could work, but I don't think it's as good as Madagascar is at the moment. Which Madagascar, he's got 63% odds, so we can pump that up to 77% with a couple of influence.
Establishing control.
And then Urantika, who actually has a decent persuasion score of 7, we can have her go down to Cambodia, and she can take it with pretty good odds. I'll pump one influence in just to get her up above 80%.
Bringing them to our side.
And we'll see how that goes. We'll confirm assignments, and then run the clock. At this point, it's mostly going to be a waiting game to see how we do on taking all these nations. So it looks like we got Georgia. So again, we're sort of getting a lot of this Central Asian, Eastern European kind of area. I'm gonna go ahead and with Georgia. Georgia has a fairly small population. I'm gonna put a little bit into economy and a little bit into funding. Welfare isn't going to be as important right away just because their inequality score isn't that bad. So we'll let this country go for now and just sit here and see what happens. And then continuing on.
We're taking over.
We took Cambodia. And so Cambodia has a sizable population, pretty bad GDP, per capita GDP. So we're going to definitely invest in the economy for that one, for this one. Inequality is pretty high, so I do want to put welfare on. There's a big jump, or sort of a cliff at 4 inequality, where bad things start happening. And so I do like to keep it below 4 if I can for most countries. And then as always, I'm going to put a pip into funding. This is just for small nations. Once we start taking big nations, we're not going to be putting as much into funding, if anything.
We have got our people in place.
And here's Madagascar. So we're having pretty good luck at taking things so far this game. Madagascar has, again, a sizable population and very bad GDP, so we're definitely going to invest in the economy. They've got high inequality, so we're going to invest some in welfare, and we're going to put a pip into funding.
We failed to take control.
We did not manage to take Namibia,
Wrapping up
unfortunately, so that's too bad. But, you know, gonna fail sometimes. All right, so then at this point, I want to check. We can afford the Vela cartel. It's a little better than the Krina organization in some ways. It's also not that much better. Again, it requires the criminal trait, and so Madeline's the only one who can have it. The missions it grants, she already has. And the monthly income, it would take 6 months to pay off in terms of ops, and not to mention the cost in dollars and influence. So I'm not going to bother getting that one either.
Ready for orders.
So we want to probably take a couple more missions with Eric and
Standing
Urantika
by.
this turn,
Ready
and then
to
see
go.
if we can have Madeline start working on either unrest to lead to a coup somewhere, or else just purging enemy control points. Anjor
by
is
for
going to
orders.
most likely be running public campaign rather than control nations, just because we're already pretty far down the list of nations we want to control, I think, at least for the early game. And we're going to have to start transitioning pretty soon. We're only, a month into the game, but about 2 months in, we're going to start transitioning to trying to take one of the big four nations. So again, that's the USA, China, India, or France to get the European Union. So we could potentially start working on one of those. Given where we've been seeing a lot of our stuff, I'm inclined to go for the European Union this game, just because we're already doing a lot in Central Asia, and we can potentially start trying to do sort of conglomerate a bunch of stuff in Central Asia and the European Union. The other possibility would be to go a little bit southeast to India. China, I'm not a huge fan of. I just find it very, very difficult to get in, although we have some popular support there already, which might make it a little more plausible to go in there. But just to give you an idea of what we're working with, Urantika's got our best public campaign mission, and she only has 1% odds of success in China. And so this is a very, very hard country to get into. We'd need to take some neighboring states, probably something like North Korea and Mongolia, and maybe like Myanmar. We also want to make sure we don't accidentally take any of their rival states, because then that causes it to be harder to do things in there. So I'm probably not a fan of China for this game, but I am a fan of going for the European Union. We could potentially try and go for the United States, but that usually requires us to build up in Canada and Mexico, which I haven't been doing because I've been focusing on tinier nations. And again, the other real option for a first big country is India, which we haven't really seen much support in the adjacent states other than the Himalayan states, which could be a nice gateway into India, but is less appealing than just trying to go for something like France, which is a little easier to take control of. So I'm going to hop back one more time into that Nations tab. I want to show all nations. And I'm going to try and take... let's see. Namibia we looked at was still pretty good. Guyana and the Pacific states we could try to take. So let's see if Madeline can take any of those. She's got pretty good odds in Guyana, so let's go ahead and do that. We'll pump in 2 influence.
Bringing them to our side.
Anjor, I'm going to have him start trying, I think, to do... he doesn't have great odds of public campaigns in France, but I kind of want to start doing that to start working towards taking a larger nation. And otherwise, we could have him try and see if there's a neighboring country that he can get control in to help out with the odds. We've got 14% odds in the Alpine states, which isn't terrible, but it's not great either. I think that
At your
what does
service.
Urantika's public campaign look like? She's actually got pretty good odds of doing a public campaign in France, so I'm going to have her go ahead and do that.
We must persuade
And I'll have
the
Anjor
people.
take a
Where do
lower
you need
chance roll at one of the smaller nations we were looking at. So, again, because I really should write these down or something, We're going to look at Namibia, and we're going to look at, we already have someone looking at Guyana, and we're going to look at the Pacific states. So Namibia and the Pacific states. So looks like he's got best odds in Namibia. So we'll pump in 2 influence, get him up to 81%.
We will bring this nation
And then
to
we'll
our
have
side.
Eric go ahead and he's got pretty bad odds of taking France, but he could potentially start going for that. But instead, we're going to have him look at the Pacific states first, which are right here. And he already has an 81% chance, so I'm just going to let him go with no
We'll bring
extra
this
influence.
nation to our side.
And with that, we'll pass time. And we have another event. We can set up our chief advisors. So we can focus on economic development, which gives us a boost to the economy priority. We can hire steely-eyed missile women and men, which gives us a boost to the spaceflight priority and the boost priority. Call in the generals. We can boost military and build army, or we can emphasize international aid, boosting welfare and knowledge. For what we're looking at right now, I think we probably want to focus on economic development. We're going to have plenty of boost from Kazakhstan, and we don't really need the 5% boost that much. Calling in the generals isn't that useful early on. We are going to want military eventually, but we're unlikely to be doing a ton with it until mid to late game. Emphasizing international aid. Boosting welfare and knowledge are potentially really useful, but I don't think they're going to be as good as economic development early on, especially because it's that 10% boost instead of 2 5% boosts. So I'm gonna go for economic development here. Just try and take small countries and develop them up for the time being.
The people will come
We
to
got
our
an
side.
event. United States of America imposed economic sanctions on Iran. Interesting. All right, and we got public support increased in France, so we went from 11% to 17%. Oh my goodness, our success chance was 81.01%, and we rolled 81.00%. So that was barely a success.
Prepping for next mission.
Oh, and our counselor was detected. We're not going to get these pop-ups every time. They'll just show up on the left side of the screen in the future. But this isn't really a big deal for early in the game. Later in the game, when the enemies start trying to steal projects, sabotage our research, or kill our counselors, this is going to be a much, much bigger deal. For the time being, though, we want to take a look at France. So we've got better popular support now. We're up at 17%, although the Academy is up at 21%, so that's not ideal. We're only in second place there, but that's going to help if and when we decide to try and start taking control points there. And then speaking of taking control points, we're going to advance time and... new alien fleet transferring to low Earth orbit 1. So that is... we can hop out there just so I can show you the space screen for a moment. But here's Victor 1, Resolute Justice. And zooming way, way out, because, oh my goodness, it's zoomed way in. Here's the space screen. This is going to become a lot more relevant a few videos down the line when we start actually going into space. But this ship is coming to Earth. It's probably going to crash land on Earth and create, whoever's aboard it is going to escape into the countryside again. So we'll pay more attention to that when it actually crash lands. All right, continuing on.
Our supporters are in place.
All right, we took the Pacific
Wrapping up
states. Here we've got decent population, fairly high inequality, and so I'm going to do the usual economy, welfare, funding spread.
We have gained significant support.
And we took Namibia. So here we've got a fairly small population, so investing in the economy isn't going to do as much, although we did get that nice little 10% bonus. So I might try to invest in it a little bit anyway. Probably not going to right away, I am going to invest in welfare, though, and in funding. So we'll give those a chance, see if we can get anywhere with that. For now, though, this is just a point that we can hold for some cheap science. Speaking of science, I'm going to take a quick look at the Research and Development tab. We're way ahead now in contributing to the We Are Not Alone technology, and we're almost done with the Skywatch and Mission to Space technologies. We've only contributed a little bit, so the Academy is going to be able to pick the new technology directions for us. So we'll have to hope the AI picks something that we actually want, but we'll see how that goes.
We've got our people in place.
All right, and Madeline has taken Guyana. So, again, very tiny population here, pretty high inequality, but actually pretty good per capita GDP already. So I am just going to go ahead and invest in the welfare priority and in the funding priority, and leave it at that. Continue on.
The trick is not to look directly at what you're trying to see. Offset your focal point somewhere to the side of where you think you notice the movement. At night, the center of your vision doesn't work as well as during the day. I won't try to explain the science to you. What matters is you'll see whatever is out there before they see you.
Here's our
Hans Castillo, advising conscripts in Colombia.
Here's our first global tech completion. All of these have a nice little quote on them. I'll probably let them read for the most part just because I enjoy listening to the quotes. Hans Castillo is the humanity first leader. He's basically the war criminal / terrorist who leads humanity first. As you can tell, I'm not a huge fan of that faction. But they picked outpost habs, which is a great direction for us. The Academy, that is. And this is going to reveal a bunch of alien vessels inside the orbit of Saturn and unlock the deep system Skywatch technology, which we want to get eventually. We also completed this one.
In the creation of heaven and earth, a wise people may find the signs of Allah. Let us heed those words and join together as we take our search into the stars. Director Khalid al-Ashgar from his khutbah at the first conclave of Muslim astrophysicists.
All right. This one is also pretty useful. It's going to let us start researching things in space and building satellites, which we're not really going to do yet. We do actually have that's a different faction that starts with a satellite. We have one mission control, but we don't have any satellites right now. We don't want to launch anything until we can actually go straight to the moon, because we really want to go and work on technology on industrializing space with space mining. So advanced electromagnetism is going to unlock a bunch of other useful things for us, and outpost habs is going to allow us to build outpost cores, and as well as unlock the mission to the moon technology and the space mining and refining technologies. So this is really, really good for us that the AI picked outpost habs, which makes sense. They want it to. I'm going to go ahead and reallocate our research a little bit. Because we're doing pretty well at We Are Not Alone, there's only 88 pips left to go, or 88 research points left to go, and we're ahead by 38. I'm going to turn that down to a single pip, and I'm going to put outpost habs at 3 pips. I really want to unlock outpost cores as soon as possible, and so I want to try and get that bonus. Advanced electromagnetism doesn't unlock any projects specifically, so I do want to contribute to it, but I don't particularly want to rush it. Alright, and that's the end of the turn. Purge mission we could use, but again, orgs haven't updated yet. We still can't afford Equinox Associates. We're probably not going to get a chance to, so hopefully it either stays in our pool, or else, if it doesn't stay in our pool, hopefully we get something good to replace it. We're doing a little bit better on building up an influence bank. We've got 52 now. We really want to get that up into the hundreds so that we can start affording organizations. And we're getting plenty of money from Singapore especially. We're getting a little less than $1 a day from our basic income, but we're getting an average of 59 a day from our spoils in Singapore. So that's pretty good. As far as what we want to do this turn, I want to start working again on France, and potentially looking at taking a few more small nations. So let's quick take a look and see if there's still some small nations that are worth trying to take early on. Oh, we're losing public support in lots of places. That's unfortunate. Probably just because other factions are running public campaigns, or we're just getting some decay over time. But going back down the list, we could do some work to try and take Tajikistan. They've got a lot of public opinion, though, for the initiative in there, so I'm not thrilled with that idea. Senegambia has all right income, but isn't great. Nicaragua is all right, but not great. Lower Guinea is all right, but not great. I thought this was sorted by science. Did I sort it by something else? It might just have updated wrong. So we could try to take a couple more of these tiny nations, get priorities set, and then worry about leaving them to their own devices after we've done that. So Senegambia, Nicaragua, and Lower Guinea are all pretty appealing for that. Mongolia is not bad. Mongolia is actually better than Nicaragua. I'm not sure why Nicaragua is higher on the list. This is missorted. Probably because it just changed. So we'll go for Senegambia, we'll go for Lower Guinea, and we'll go for Mongolia.
Where to?
So I'm going to try and control Lower Guinea. We'll give her 2 influence to help with that.
We'll bring this nation to our side.
Anjor can take Mongolia, and we'll give him 1 influence to get him above 80.
Putting our people
Again.
in place.
Eric, I'm going to have him try and take Senegambia, which is going to be a little harder. It's lower down the list. 80% shot, though, to start with, so that's not too bad.
Establishing our presence.
And then Urantika, I'm going to have
Your
run
orders?
public support, or a public support campaign in France again,
I will try to sway the public.
because we want to try and transition to France shortly here. All right, and let's run time. We should get an org update at the middle of the month.
We are winning
Orgs
their
update
hearts
once a
and
month, and so that's pretty handy to get a new
taking
access
over.
to a bunch of new ones potentially. We got a critical success in Mongolia, so success chance was 82%, roll was 2%, so critical success, and so we got public opinion boosted as well as
We'll
gaining
be
a
ready
control
for
point.
new orders soon.
Mongolia has a pretty small population. They don't actually have... There's not actually much going on here. They've got not great GDP, not super high inequality, and such a tiny population that I'm not super thrilled with investing in either economy or welfare. And so I'm actually going to just put a single pip into funding and let them work on that for now, and just have this be sort of a little cash flow nation. We could potentially do something with spoils instead, but again, I'm going to just try and go for some of the slightly longer term planning of getting a lot of funding for late game.
We're taking over.
All right, we took Lower Guinea as well. Here we have a decent population, 10 million. High inequality, low per capita GDP. So I'm going to invest in both economy and welfare, and then again in funding.
We've gained significant support.
In Senegambia, 21 million population, so investing in economy makes sense. I am going to put a pip in welfare just because they are a little higher on the inequality side. They're below 4, but I do want to try and prioritize keeping that below 4 longer, and the economy priority will increase inequality over time. So that one should be good. And then that was all of our missions for this sequence.
The dreamer in me wants to believe it would bring a golden age of advancement and prosperity for all mankind. But I'm a realist. I know better. Any race advanced enough to find us would be advanced enough to end us, likely without even regarding us. Commander Fiona Ayawade, NATO Symposium on First Contact.
That's the Resistance talking. Fiona Ayawade is, I think, is the most common leader that people interact with early on. But now this unlocks the Clandestine Cells project, which as soon as we get it, we want, because that gets us a 5th counselor, which is going to help a ton. It also unlocks a bunch of other projects, which are interesting. We're not going to actually go for any of those projects right away. We're going to go for advanced chemical rocketry. This is a pretty useful technology that unlocks potentially a bunch of really good space boosts. And so we really want to get advanced chemical rocketry early, and we want to be the one who invests the most in it. So we're going to do that. There are a number of other technologies here that are interesting. I'm not going to go into the tech tree too much. It's wildly complicated, but advanced chemical rocketry is going to be our first pick. We do also get a 15% boost from our counselors because I believe we have a physicist as one of our counselors. I believe they're the ones who get the material science bonus. I'd have to take a look again, but we're going to move that up to 3 pips. And so we're going to try and take control of Outpost Habs and advanced chemical rocketry at this point. We'll see if we're able to do that or not. The Academy obviously has a fair bit of science, and so we're going to have a little bit of trouble outstripping them on both, I think. But if we need to, we can probably abandon advanced electromagnetism to them to try and get a little bit more oomph on that. We still haven't unlocked any more projects. We are hopefully going to do that soon, though, and then start researching those right away. But not this turn. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look. Here we get a little pop-up telling us there's new orgs available, so we're going to take a look at them. So we have a few still that we had before. So the CIA, the Vela Cartel, and Equinox Associates are all still available. We still can't afford Equinox Associates, unfortunately. But we've got a few new options. So the main intelligence directorate we can't actually take because we would need to have a control point in Russia. National Gendarmerie Intervention Group, we would need to have a control point in France, which we might soon. But it's not all that appealing. It's got a negative monthly income in terms of money. It does have 2 ops per month, which is kind of appealing. And it gives some useful missions, mainly assault alien asset and detain counselor, which we may or may not want at some point. Finally, Pelican Nanomedicine, we can actually get right away, and it's going to give us 23 science income per month immediately, which is not as big a deal as it would have been earlier. We're up to 359 now, but we might want that anyway. The +3 science stat is also kind of interesting. It'd be useful later on. I am thinking that I don't really want to buy it right now, though, because it costs almost $500 to buy it, and I'd rather save up for Equinox Associates and try and get that, if that sticks around. So we'll leave Pelican alone for now, just because the science boost isn't that huge for us. It's like less than 10% increase, marginal increase. And Equinox would be very, very useful to get that +3 persuasion, as well as getting those extra missions, plus the boost to social science research. So I'm going to wait on buying any orgs until a little bit later on. And we're going to go ahead and try and maybe take a couple more small nations, but probably be just focusing on France in the near future. We've got up to, 25% public support? And there's high unrest in the Central African Republic. We took that in the first game. We probably shouldn't have. It's not a very great country in terms of its stats. If we really wanted to fix things there, we would have to invest a ton of resources to try and keep unrest low. So it is what it is. We'll probably just leave our priorities there, and hopefully it improves on its own for some time. But meanwhile, we're going to have Urantika run another public campaign in France.
Making our case.
I want to see
Standing
what
by.
Eric's odds of taking a control point in France are. He's only got 24% odds right now. So we could get that up to a coin flip by spending 4 influence. But I think I'd rather have him work on taking a smaller country this turn, and then try and take France next turn after another public campaign mission or 2 have run. Meanwhile, Madeline could potentially go and do some purge missions. She has that decent espionage score, or she could potentially try and launch a coup somewhere if there's anywhere we're interested in doing that. Looks like, so here's Tajikistan we were interested in earlier. They don't have very high unrest, so coup is not likely to work there, only 5%. And then a purge, only 15% success rate. So that's not great. We could take a chance at it. I mean, it's about a 1 in 6 shot. But we could also just keep on going down the list of tiny countries that are still open and see if any of them are worth getting. So I'm going to keep scrolling down for a minute longer and see if, let's see, Nicaragua is still appealing somewhat. So we could try and take that. And once we get down to Laos, it's a lot less appealing. We're getting down below that 10 science a month threshold where it's not really as big a deal to try and control these nations. So I'm going to, I think we're going to have Madeline possibly combo with Anjor to try and see if we can do something about like Tajikistan. Just because we're already right near it. We've already got some of these surrounding countries. Uzbekistan could also be kind of interesting. It's not as great in terms of science per CP, but we could take it just to try and help leverage bonuses in Tajikistan if we wanted to really focus on Central Asia a little bit. Running a public campaign in Tajikistan, we could do not great odds. We could pump in a little bit of money, give him much better odds, and use that to try and help support a purge operation.
Making our case.
So I'm gonna have him take a look at that.
Ready.
Eric, I was gonna have go take Nicaragua because I think that's the last good 1 control point country in terms of science income.
Bringing them on board.
And then Madeline.
Ready for my mission.
Madeline, we could have take a random control point somewhere. We're still only at about half of our cap, so we do want to work up to that 157. We usually want to be at cap, or we can go slightly above it at the cost of penalties to our influence income as well as some of our defenses against other counselors. But it's still probably worth going up to or slightly above the cap most of the time. So if we do want to do a purge mission, the easiest places to do it would be these academy points. I'm not actually sure why. They're probably, are they over their cap maybe? Yeah, the academy has spread out way over its control point cap. So you see we get this bonus of 16.2 to take points from them. So we could actually try and purge a control point in Russia potentially, just to mess with the academy a little bit. Don't want them just getting, free lunch the whole time. But I'm more inclined. I think I'm more inclined to try and take a control point with Madeline this turn somewhere else if there's anywhere that has decent odds. There really aren't that many good places to go. We could just try and take the Himalayan states. We've got decent odds there. And they have okay science. It's not great. But they've got a big population and a low GDP per capita. So it might be worth setting some priorities there and then leaving the nation in order to, again, build it up for later game. So I'm going to go ahead and pump in 2 influence. I'll have her take the Himalayan states.
Putting our people in place.
And then again, we're setting up a public campaign here in Tajikistan to try and potentially purge out the initiative later on. So we'll see how this all goes. And the Clandestine Cells project is available. We want that immediately. Clandestine Cells both gives us a 5th counselor and gives us a boost of 10 to our control point cap. So both of those things are excellent. We are not beating the Academy by all that much on outpost tabs. We are beating them by a fair amount on advanced chemical rocketry. So I'm going to turn down advanced chemical rocketry a little bit. And then boost up Clandestine Cells because we really want that as soon as we can get it. I do still want to take control of outpost tabs if I can, but we'll see how that goes.
Our case remains unheard.
And we failed the public support mission in France, unfortunately. And we have, it looks like we have identified another operative. We won't be getting those pop-ups regularly anymore, but here's an enemy counselor doing something. It's probably an academy, maybe it's not an academy counselor. It looks like they might have done a crackdown on an academy point.
Public opinion is moving in our direction.
All right, so we got a nice boost to public opinion in Tajikistan, and I don't know that I'm that opposed to them just trying to invest in the spaceflight program, but I do want to, I think, do something else with it. So continue, see if we get our points, control points. All right, we got Nicaragua. Nicaragua has a fairly small population, fairly high inequality. So I am going to put a point into economy anyway, as well as welfare and funding, just because I do think it's a low enough per capita GDP that we might get some benefit long term from investing in it. But really, this is not going to be great until we can do some unification of maybe Central America or something like that.
We still lack support.
Ooh, critical failure in the Himalayan states. That's not great. It's fine. We did lose some popular support or public opinion from that, which isn't great. But again, that was sort of a nice to have, not a need to have. All right, and here come the aliens. So this alien ship has arrived in low Earth orbit and is probably going to crash land in about, yes, there it goes. Crash landed in the Khartoum region in Sudan. So Sudan, we can go and investigate this crashdown site, and we're probably going to want to try and surveil the location to see if we can get some information about alien abductions going on. So that was why we did the Alien Signatures project earlier. So I believe, who actually has the surveil location mission? So Madeline does,
Reporting in.
as does, I think, no, Udentika doesn't have it. That's unfortunate. But
here.
we'll have Madeline go ahead and surveil location by the crash site in Sudan. No, we won't, because she can't actually go there because the unrest is too high. So that's unfortunate. Let's see if she can surveil an adjacent country, just in case. So she could go into Chad. She can't go into South Sudan or the Central African Republic. She could go to Egypt. So we're going to have her go to Chad, I think. She can't go to Ethiopia either. A lot of these countries have pretty high unrest. So we'll have her survey in Chad and hopefully identify if any alien activity happens near there.
Setting a watch.
And then
Get orders?
Andor can go ahead and investigate the actual crash site. That's going to cost us 5 ops, but we've got a okay bank of ops. We'll be hopefully getting more as time goes on.
At your service.
Eric, I want you to. I think I want Eric to try and take that point in France this turn. We're gonna take a shot at it rather than going for the Himalayan states again. We can pump in a few influence to get it up to a coin flip. And what else? Yeah, and we'll run another public campaign. The public campaign should resolve first. So if we succeed at the public campaign, that'll boost his odds a little bit too. So we're gonna try and take France this turn, or start taking France this turn, as well as work on these other spots.
We must not only defend human lives from the aliens, we must ensure those lives remain worth living.
All right, and this is the Resistance. We don't really need to worry about them too much. We'll be in conflict with them, but they aren't likely to be... They're actually likely to be helpful to us because they're going to try and slow the servants down a lot, which might be enough to help us just focus on winning instead of having to slow the servants down ourselves. And they're unlikely to win the game before we do, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Initiating surveillance.
All right, we have detected xenoforms in the Khartoum region. So there's alien flora and fauna. Microbes and plants so far. So that's something that we probably want to deal with at some point, is as the aliens move around, they'll be trying to xenoform Earth a little bit. So terraforming, but getting alien stuff instead. We may or may not want to clean up a bunch of the xenoforming because we don't really want the aliens to be taking control of the Earth. We want them to leave Earth alone. And so taking control of the Earth is more the servant's goal. We just want to actually keep Earth independent. We can now take the Alien Flora project. So let's take a look at what that looks like. We'll probably want to do that at some point, but we definitely want to do clandestine cells first. So I'm not gonna interrupt clandestine cells to do that, but it might be the next thing we research after that, depending on what else unlocks.
Public sentiment is increasingly with us.
All right, Antica got us a little more public support in France, and so that means that we've gone up to a 64% shot to take one of the control points, which would be really nice. We'll see if it succeeds, though. Social science lab. So that's going to be for later in the game. We'll want to research that eventually, but that's going to be to help build up things in outer space.
Here is what we have found.
All right, UFO crashdown site in Sudan. We investigated.
Prepping for my next mission.
Nothing too big there. That does give us a little bonus to researching alien topics in the future. We're still hoping to try and get more information about abductions. All right, we succeeded in France.
Prepping for next mission.
So we've got 1 of 4 control points, which is nice. That gives us a 23 science boost. It is a more expensive control point. This one costs 14.41, if you can see on there, which is much higher than most of the other countries we've looked at. So France in total is going to cost us about 60 control points, whereas all of the other countries controlled in aggregate are right now sitting at about 75. So that's a little bit why I've been holding off on doing it until just now. Let's finish the turn, finish November. Take a quick look. Aliens have become more popular in the Philippines. That's not the greatest place to go and investigate. I did want to take a look at our orgs again. We still can't afford Equinox Associates. I'm hoping that we get to that before the middle of December, when it's likely to cycle out of our org pool, but we'll see. We'll see if that happens. So we've got our first control point in France. I'm gonna have Eric try and take a second control point in France. I am gonna let him spend a fair amount of influence again, so 4 influence.
Taking control.
And then Urantika, we're gonna have continue to do
op?
public campaigns in France to make it easier.
Where to?
Madeline, we did not identify what I was hoping to identify with the surveil location mission, where I was hoping to try and find some information about the aliens, because we do want to try and identify them abducting people at some point. So as is, I'm instead going to have her go and look at probably Tajikistan again, which, if she tries to purge it now, she's got a 19% chance. So I'm gonna feed a couple of influence into that and let her just go for it. I'm probably spending more resources than are actually worth it on this country, but I do want to try and get that, I think. So we're gonna have her take a shot at
Removing
that.
our enemies.
We'll have Anjor
Ready
take a
to
shot
go.
at increasing public support there first. So I'll spend a little bit of money to give him a better shot at that.
We must persuade the people.
And we will let them go with that. We're still getting fairly good
Public
spoils.
opinion is moving in our direction.
All right. Critical success on the public campaign mission. So we got 11% boost. Previously, we were getting about half that.
Wrapping up here.
So that helps a fair bit. Oh, I forgot to change the French priorities. We really want to do that. And then now Eric's odds went up by about 15% because of that boost to public support. So let's clear out things. France, we probably want to boost economy. They've already got a very strong economy, but we want to boost it more. We want to boost welfare, and I think we want to boost mission control. We haven't talked about mission control yet that much. That's going to be very important for the mid to late game. Mission control helps us support space colonies. It helps us support spaceships. We want a lot of it at some point. And one of the advantages of going for France, and by extension the European Union, is that we will get a lot of mission control in the process. So I'm going to go ahead and have France allocate as much as we can control to economy, welfare, and mission control. We're not going to spend any time on funding here. Again, I'm sort of just using that for longer term nations that I'm likely to abandon later on so that they just work on it long term, and hopefully get us what we need for the late game. But right now, France, we really want to get that mission control up, and we'll leave economy and welfare as well just to keep the economy going pretty strong.
We have moved the needle.
All right, and in Tajikistan, we got a nice boost in public support, which
Laying the
increases
groundwork.
Madeline's odds somewhat. So we'll see if we can take control there.
Our supporters are in place.
And we have a second control
We'll
point
be
in
ready for new
France.
orders.
That's great. I'm going to just copy across the priorities I said earlier: economy, welfare, and mission control. And then continue on to see how the purge goes.
We are in
It
control
succeeded.
now.
All right, so it was only 42% chance of success, but we
Prepping
got
for
it.
next mission.
So Tajikistan, we can now set, as we've been doing. Here they've got okay population, so I am going to go for economy. I don't really think they need welfare right away. Inequality isn't too bad. And then funding. I'm going to clear the military pip. So we'll start with just economy and funding and see how that goes, and work from there. All right, so they really want me to investigate the Philippines, don't they? I don't particularly want to investigate the Philippines. The servants are currently in control of one control point in the Philippines and have a huge amount of public opinion in their favor. But I think that we'll be okay waiting on trying to investigate for other things until later on. So, meanwhile, Madeline. All right, so Eric.
Ready for my mission.
Eric is gonna try and continue to take France. We're gonna pump in a couple of influence, get him up to 72% chance of
Establishing
success.
control.
Good, Antica is gonna continue
Where
to
to?
support that. She could actually try and take a point in France now that we've got a. Oh, and she's got a ability Media Darling that helps a lot with her odds of taking it. So we'll actually not have her do public campaign this turn. We'll just have her try to control it
We'll
as
be
well.
running this place in no
So
time.
if
Where do
we
you need
get
me?
both control points, then we'll have full control over France. Meanwhile, Madeline, we could try to take another small country. We could try to do another purge. Right now, there's nowhere particularly good to purge. So I guess we'll take the advice of the game and go ahead and do a survey location in the Philippines. I'm gonna have her do it in Manila. That is the capital region.
Standing by.
And we'll go from there. Now, Anjor could try and do a public campaign in France, actually, to help with both of the control point claims that we're going to try and do. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, invest a little bit of money in again.
I will try to sway the
and
public.
go from there.
Initiating recon.
Alright, so she's looking around in
Wrapping up
Manila,
here.
seeing if we can identify some alien abductions or anything like that.
The people will come to our side.
And we got the public support, so we got another 5% on that, which is good. Xenology Lab is, again, another space thing that we can work towards later on. We don't really need it right away, but it'll be nice to have once we're actually expanding into space.
We've got our people in place.
All right, so 87%, she rolled 85.
We'll be ready for new orders soon.
We get a third control point in France, and hopefully we take the executive.
We are taking over.
We did it. All right, we
Ready
have
for next
France. So we have France under control. We're diverting all of their economy, or all of the investment that we can control, into their building their economy, into keeping their inequality down, and into building mission control. Looking at it again, I'm not sure that I actually care to invest in their economy or welfare right now, because they're already pretty high at 47,000 per capita GDP and pretty low at 3.2 inequality. So I'm actually going to just invest purely in mission control and have them really try and start building up their space program a lot more. France has can support quite a lot of mission control. It can support 14. That's what this column over here is. It also has some decent boost, which is kind of nice. Although that boost is spread out across the European Union, so we're not getting all of it. That's where we really want to. Excuse me, that's Ukraine. That's where we really want to get Kazakhstan out of the Eurasian Union as soon as we can. So it's going to be another 126 days for that, but we'll do what we can with it. One last thing is before we get to the end of the month, I do want to take a look here, and it looks like we can in fact get Equinox Associates now. And so I'm thinking I'm gonna buy that before I risk it cycling away. We could take the National Gendarmerie Intervention Group, but I don't know that we want that more than Equinox Associates. So I'm gonna take Equinox Associates. It gives a nice boost to persuasion and a nice boost, and a decent boost to espionage. So we probably want to either put it on Eric and really boost his persuasion very high, or potentially on someone like Madeline so that her persuasion is more usable, while still giving her a boost to espionage, which is her primary stat at the moment. It does also give the public campaign mission, which is really nice. So that's something that right now the only Anjor and Urantika are the only ones with public campaigns. So if we have Eric able to do public campaigns as well, that could be really nice. So I think I'm going to have Eric take Equinox Associates. He's already got a fairly high persuasion score, but this is going to get it to be very, very nice. So, and we can always reassign it later if we have to, although it does cost more resources to do that. But just getting his persuasion up to 10 is going to be really nice for giving us a chance at taking harder to get control points, and also using this turn counselor mission if and when we start investigating enemies. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then that uses up too much influence for us to get the National Gendarmerie group, so we just won't worry about that one for now. And otherwise, let's finish out the turn. and we actually now control the French military, so we have a army that we can deploy if we want. But we don't need to do that right now, and in fact this is where I want to wrap for today. So we've had some good success. We've taken a number of small countries to get a big science boost, so our monthly income is now up to 543.2 in science, which is really nice. We've taken France, which is a good big country to start with. They want me to take the US of A, but that's going to be a little too hard. Even with his higher persuasion, taking a control point in the US has a 0% chance of success. So the US is pretty inaccessible early game unless you really build towards it. But yeah, that's where we'll leave it for today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you join us next time.